This is the Charleston Wedding Podcast, your ultimate guide to everything you need to know about planning your dream wedding in charming and historic Charleston, South Carolina. Breathtaking venues, captivating traditions, the latest trends, and expert advice is here on the Charleston Wedding Podcast, bringing you insights from wedding planners, photographers, caterers, florists, and other industry experts who call Charleston home. Now, here's your host, Kathy Baxley-Stewart.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for being with us at the Charleston Wedding Podcast. And we always like to start with a little bit of trivia, a little bit of, history, you'd say, on what is trending right now in the Charleston wedding industry. And really all over the country, I guess. So first of all, I did a little bit of homework and I looked at what the wedding colors were for 2022. So the most popular wedding colors we had were, first of all, number 5 was a green, both light and dark green, which I feel like you didn't see a whole lot in the past. So green has gotten more popular lately, even in clothing and things like that. I've seen a lot of those things. Number 4 was dark blue or navy blue, which I absolutely love. 3 was a royal blue, which was interesting as well. Number 2 was ivory, champagne, and white, which I found to be quite interesting, usually because they say if the bride wears white, you don't wear white. So to have the bridesmaids in white and ivory was a little different. I actually went to a wedding, back in the 80s, I believe, and it was all white, everything, the tuxedos, the bridesmaids' dresses, the bride dress, obviously, everything was in white, and it was absolutely magical. It was so, so pretty. And then the number 1 color was gold. So that's kind of royal. And I thought that was pretty. So I'm going to invite you to do your homework, look at Pinterest and Instagram, all the different social platforms, and try and find out what your best colors would be for your upcoming wedding. I want to introduce our guest. I'm really excited because this is, I'm married, so I've made all my wedding plans and that's all done. That's over with. So but I am interested in honeymoon packages and vacations and things like that. My husband and I enjoy traveling. And so we have this morning with us Jennifer Watson, and she's from Our Sweet Tea Life Travel. And she has tons of information for you guys who are planning a honeymoon. So without further ado, let's get to Jen. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Kathy, how are you?
I'm doing really well. I know you've had a busy summer.
I have. Yeah, we've traveled a lot. We've actually had 3 weddings this summer. So I've gotten to see some of those colors and trends this summer that are going on. So
okay. So as a travel agent, you absolutely get to travel to these different locations and kind of have a firsthand look at what you can suggest to people.
I do. Yeah. That's one of the perks of my job for sure.
Okay. So where were you this summer?
So this year I've been to Punta Cana and I've been to Mexico, specifically Playa del Carmen, Mexico was the area I was in, just south of Cancun. Jen
and I have known each other for a while. You've done the Charleston Bridal Show with us for several years. So I'd kind of be remiss if I didn't ask you, how has the show helped you in your business?
So it's really helped me just grow my business here in the Charleston area. So my husband and I moved here 4 years ago because this is a place we just love. We used to vacation here in Charleston and always had a dream of living here. And we both work from home and own our own companies. And so we thought, you know what, why not? And so it's really been helpful in getting my name out there here in our local community and just getting to meet with brides here locally and share my love for travel with them.
Awesome. That's really great. So how did Our Sweet Tea Life, the name of your business, how did that come about?
So we live in Somerville, and Somerville, one of our claim to fames here is we are the birthplace of sweet tea. So when I kind of chose my name, I wanted to do something local. And so we chose Our Sweet Tea Life Travel, just to kind of pay homage to our hometown of Somerville.
And I'm a local, and I didn't even know that. Like, I didn't know Somerville claimed that. So that's really interesting.
We have the world record for the largest glass of sweet tea here. You can actually see it downtown. It's called Mason, and it's this really large mason jar that they filled with sweet tea, and they broke the world record a few years ago.
Oh my goodness, that's interesting. Well, I'll have to go down there and look at that. I did not know that. You learn something new every day. So let's get into the wedding honeymoon planning. And I know you're the expert on that. So I'm assuming, the brides have their venue and they pick their dresses and their colors and those kind of things. But when during the wedding planning process should couples start planning for their honeymoon?
Yeah. So, I always suggest early. So airfare, like for the major airlines like American, Delta, United, is typically released 330 days out. So if you're wanting to book like a full package, including air, about a year out is when I would start looking. Now, there are exceptions to that. If they're specifically looking for maybe a high demand resort or destination. So if they have their heart set on the Maldives and an overwater bungalow, or if they're wanting Casa de Campo in the Dominican Republic, something that's a really high demand resort or area, then we can start looking ahead of time, and we can always add airfare in later when it becomes available. But typically I see most brides about a year out start looking for honeymoon planning. And I feel like that's a good time frame to give them that. The other thing too to consider is if you want more time to make payments on your honeymoon, you can always book earlier as well. Because I know some engagements now are a year and a half, 2 years. So if they're ready to do that and they want more time to pay towards their honeymoon, they can certainly, like I said, book the resort earlier and then add the airfare in when it becomes available.
I never really had thought about that, like making payments on your honeymoon trip, but that's a great point because you don't have to come up with the whole full sum of it right away. So
right.
Okay, that's great. So what are the benefits of utilizing a travel agent to assist you with your honeymoon planning? So I know you're the expert. What do you know that they wouldn't know? Like, what are some like surprises that you don't want them to be caught with?
Right. And I get this question a lot. Like, hey, I can book online. There's so many great booking engines nowadays. Like, why would I use you? So I think there's 4 main reasons to use a travel agent. I think the first one is our expertise. This is what we do. Like you said, we travel a lot. So we're in the destinations. We're seeing the resorts firsthand. If you're just looking on Expedia or Travelocity, they're going to show you the pictures they want you to see. Or if you're going to the resort's website, they're not showing you if a resort that at once was a fabulous resort is now kind of worn down and, not as fabulous as it once was. So we're in the destination. We're seeing the resorts firsthand. We're talking with the players at the resort. So like if you're planning a destination wedding or honeymoon, we have personal connections with the sales managers and the wedding team and the general manager at that resort. And when we go and visit, we meet them one-on-one typically and talk with them, have their contact information so we can make requests on your behalf. We have those connections with them. We also stay up to date on, like you said, current trends in the honeymoon industry and destinations. We know the good times to travel to certain destinations. For example, Costa Rica has become kind of a popular request for honeymoons, but they have a really long rainy season. So if you're wanting to go to Costa Rica and your idea of a perfect honeymoon is laying on the beach every day for 4 hours with a drink in your hand, probably not going to want to go to Costa Rica during the rainy season. So we're up to date on, all of that as well. We know obviously during hurricane season, when the peak of that is, telling you, you always want to consider that when you're going to the Caribbean. I know right now the Atlantic is kind of on fire with a bunch of stuff out there. So, we know to kind of advise you like, hey, this is a risk you're taking at this time of year. Maybe you want to wait a little bit longer. And I think the number one reason to use a travel agent, and I think we've seen this over the last 4 years specifically, is if something comes up, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's, entry requirements for countries, whether it's your flight is delayed or you miss a connection or your bags don't show up, you have an actual person to call. I will answer my cell phone. You can't call Expedia. You can't call Travelocity. And we're gonna be your advocate there on your behalf to help you, and maybe even take care of a problem before you even know it arises. I had a honeymoon couple recently who I noticed their flight was delayed. They were going to miss a connection. I called American Airlines, got on the phone with them before they even landed, and I had them rebooked on the next flight. So they didn't have to do anything. When they landed, I texted them. I said, hey, I see you missed your connection. No worries. You're on the next flight. It's in 2 hours. Go enjoy a drink and your next flight will take off. And I've called the resort. I've arranged your transfers. So everything is taken care of you kind of behind the scenes, and it's not something you have to stress about.
You just threw out a lot of details and I was getting nervous. I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about all that stuff, right? So you're a lot like a wedding planner as well as a travel agent. I mean, you kind of put those things all together, and take care of the bride and groom's needs and cares and concerns and that kind of thing.
Right. We also can save them a lot of time too in research. So, whenever I meet with brides and grooms, I kind of find out what they like, what they don't like. And I can, when you're looking on the internet, there's so much, it can easily overwhelm you, and you can spend hours researching resort after resort after resort to try to find that perfect one. Whereas you can take a 20-minute phone call with a travel agent, and they can narrow that list of 100 resorts down to maybe 5 based on, what your budget is and when you want to travel. And, are you looking for a large resort or a small resort? Do you want to have a lot of activities, or do you want to just sit on the beach and read a book and it to be quiet? And we can really narrow that down for you because, again, we know the resorts, we've been to them, we've seen them, we've done training on them. So
podcasting has exploded in popularity, especially local podcasts. As of 2022, 62% of Americans have listened to a podcast. 38% have listened in the last month. 26% in the last week. The podcasting audience is booming with no signs of slowing down. Call the podcast hotline to be featured on these podcasts or to receive information about podcast marketing. Call 843-530-0403 or visit carolinapodcasts.com.
You mentioned hurricane season.
Yes.
And obviously in Charleston, we always have to deal with that around the end of August and into September, like you said. Always tell brides, if you can possibly avoid it, try not to get married in September because it could possibly be delayed. Right. And you know what to do if their honeymoon were delayed for that reason as well. You always have a plan B.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And we always highly encourage anyone traveling. I mean, I encourage anyone traveling at all in general to have travel protection, but especially if you're traveling during hurricane season, you want that insurance to protect you.
The top honeymoon destinations that couples are requesting right now, what are those?
So right now, I've done 8 honeymoons just this year to St. Lucia. St. Lucia has become a really popular destination. There's a lot of great resorts there. Sandals has 3 resorts there in St. Lucia that are wonderful for romance travel, couples, honeymoons, anniversaries, that kind of thing. And they're all very different. And the nice thing with their resort too is if you stay at one, you have access to all 3. So, if you're staying at one and you're like, you know what, we want to try dinner over at the other one tonight, you have that ability to transfer between the resorts. So St. Lucia is probably the number one destination I've seen this year. Like I mentioned earlier, I've seen a lot of Costa Rica requests. But a lot of people, once they find out how long their rainy season is, some of them have decided, yes, that's really where I want to go. And some people want to go during the rainy season because that is the time you can see all of the turtles. That is the best time for whale watching. Everything is really lush and green. So Costa Rica,
for your animal lovers, that would be an awesome time for them to go.
Right. Yeah. Costa Rica has been a one I've had requested a lot. Mexico and Punta Cana are always up there just because of the value you get there, what you can get for your money there. There's some fabulous, wonderful resorts, some of my favorite resorts in Mexico and Punta Cana that price just really, really well and are a good value for honeymooners. Europe, we've seen a lot of Europe this year, a lot of requests for Europe, people wanting to go over to Europe and do, start in Rome and then, end up in London or, kind of travel around a little bit by train. So I've got probably 4 or 5 honeymooners in Europe this year. And then Jamaica. Jamaica's always kind of one of the top destinations just because it's so fun and so lively. And there's a lot of great options for adult only resorts in Jamaica.
You're all over the world for sure.
Yeah.
So the St. Lucia, they have shuttles that go from like one of the resorts to the other. Is that how that works?
Yeah, you have to arrange it with the concierge, but they do. Yeah.
Okay. What information do the bride and groom need to have when they're calling you and they're like, okay, we want to plan our honeymoon? What do you suggest that they sort of have together?
Right. So the best things for us that help us get started for them are dates. Now, they don't have to have specific dates, but maybe a date range. If they're saying we want to travel in May or we want to travel in June, just kind of a date range. If they have specific dates, that's even better. But if not, just a date range of when they want to travel. Also, a budget. Budget is probably the number one thing I would say. Sit down, talk with each other about what you're comfortable spending, and then let your travel advisor know that, because that really helps us give you the best value for what you want to spend. I have some people say we want a good deal. And sometimes a good deal to me is, wouldn't be really a good deal to you. So having like an actual number of like, hey, we're comfortable spending, $5,000 on our honeymoon. And we don't want to spend any more. It really helps us to narrow down the best options for you within that price point. And I would say the average price for a honeymoon, if you're wanting to go for 1 week, if you're wanting to do all inclusive, is between $4,000 and $7,000 is where you're going to fall. If you're wanting 7 nights all inclusive at a nice resort right now, those days.
And most couples want the all inclusive, I would think. It just makes it easier with no monetary surprises as they get there.
Right. And that cost has really jumped over the last couple of years. I mean, right after COVID, there was some amazing deals out there. And so people are still kind of looking for those. Hey, we want to spend $2,000 and we want to stay for a week and we want adult only and we want all inclusive. And unfortunately, just like your eggs cost $7, the price of travel has also went up. So unfortunately, those days are pretty well over, but you can get a decent, $2,000 a person, a nice resort for a week that you can find. Also, kind of your likes and dislikes. Like I said, it's great to jump on a phone call with your travel advisor or maybe converse via email or text on what you like. Are you looking, are you somebody who likes to be active on your honeymoon? Are you somebody who wants nightlife, or do you, again, just want to sit on the beach and read a book and have somebody continue to bring you fruity drinks and
with little umbrellas and all that good stuff.
And have it be quiet, because there's resorts for both. Zoetree, that is their market. They have no entertainment at night. They have yoga during the day. Everything is very quiet and relaxing. They don't have music by the pools. So for somebody who wants to go and have a great time and have nightlife, if you sent them there, they would hate it. Whereas Breathless Resorts, it is a party 24/7 at those resorts. They've got DJs by the pool and they've got foam parties and they've got nightlife and daytime activities. And so somebody who wants to go and read a book would be miserable there. So what you like to do as a couple, the things you enjoy doing. Do you want a destination where there's opportunities to leave the resort, where it's safe? Those kind of things are really helpful when you're talking.
The couple who, I know they're out there. The couple who's like, our wedding's in like a month and we haven't even thought about a honeymoon, and they're calling you at the last minute and they're like, are there any deals out there? Are there last minute deals?
There are. Yeah, occasionally. Typically it's going to be, again, Mexico, Punta Cana.
You may get what you get if you wait that long, though.
Right. Or, I think we're going to kind of get to this later, but that's, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions about honeymoons is that you have to leave the day after your wedding. You don't. And honestly, when I'm talking to brides and grooms, that's actually something I encourage them not to do. Right after your wedding, you're coming down from this amazing high and everything's been so busy and kind of chaotic sometimes at the last minutes. And for some couples, you're moving in together and you're trying to, put your home together and having to leave, your wedding's on a Saturday and having to get up Sunday morning and get on a plane. sometimes isn't relaxing, because in the back of your mind, you're thinking about all the things that are at home that are undone, that you've kind of left in disarray. So a lot of times I'll encourage them, wait maybe a month, or two.
Okay.
Or if you're a destination like Costa Rica and you're getting married in rainy season and you don't want to go in rainy season, wait until it's, the best time to go. So you can enjoy.
Are there, so you mentioned that, and I was thinking while you were talking, what if they say, okay, that's great, we're going to wait a week. We want to just kind of unwind for a week. But maybe they don't, maybe they got married in Charleston, but they don't live here. Do you have connections with people here in Charleston that you can say, oh, well, you can stay here for a week or a few days, or, that kind of thing, like the hotels and things here?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the things. So one of my specialties other than romance travel is Charleston. So I put together a girls' getaway every year in Charleston, twice a year in the spring and fall. And then also on demand. So I have a good relationship with a lot of the hotels, resorts. I can recommend some Airbnbs here in town if they want to stay here. Or we can just, fly them out of an airport that's close to where they live. So sometimes too, Charleston, unfortunately, one of the downsides of Charleston is we don't have a lot of direct flights to any of the Caribbean destinations. So sometimes it saves clients money too, to travel up to Charlotte, do a park and fly up there where they can stay the night before their flight. And then their parking is included in that park and fly hotel. The hotel will shuttle them to the airport, and then they get that nonstop direct flight to their destination.
You've got such great information. Like, you're making me want to book a vacation. I could use a vacation. Yeah, that sounds good. We talked about how early we're going to book that honeymoon, like up to a year or even 2 years. We could do even that long ahead in advance. Okay.
Yeah. 2 years.
What are the best resorts for honeymooners? So I'm assuming that most honeymooners are going to want the adult only. So what are the best resorts for that?
Yeah. So in my opinion, Sandals, you've seen their commercials. They've been around since the 80s. They definitely have that market, that romance market for sure. So Sandals used to be owned by the gentleman that owns Sandals now is Adam Stewart, and his father, Butch Stewart, was the previous owner. His father passed away, I think it's been about a year ago. So Adam has stepped into that role of CEO of Sandals Resorts and really brought it into the 21st century. A lot of the resorts were getting kind of dated with the old wood and a lot of their new resorts that they've built over the last few years. And his vision for their company is really nice, fresh, modern, contemporary. And I've really loved what he's done with the resorts. But they still really have that market down. I mean, their resorts are fabulous for honeymooners, anniversaries, destination weddings, if you're just inviting adults, because they've got that market and that's all they do. So that's all they know.
They have anticipated every need and want you could possibly think of, I'm sure, and a fresh eye with a younger kind of crowd. So that's awesome.
Right. And for those clients maybe that have a lower budget, the Secrets resorts are also adult only, and they're fabulous. And then there's also Zoetry, which I had mentioned earlier. So those are the more boutique style, quiet resorts. They are not adult only. However, they have absolutely no kids programs. So you don't see a lot of families with kids there. There's nothing for the kids.
There's nothing for them to do, but just play in the sand and go in the water, and that's about it. So, so I know that there's a difference between the all-inclusive and the European plan resorts. So that's all Greek to me. So explain that to us.
Right. So all-inclusive means basically all of your meals, all of your beverages, all of the included activities at that resort. And that will vary based on the resort, what they include and what they don't include. Most resorts, I would say 90% of the resorts include all of your non-motorized water sports. So you can think kayaks, paddle boards, Hobie cats, that kind of stuff would be included. And then any motorized sports would be something that was extra. And that is with the exception of Sandals. And that is the other really nice thing about Sandals is they even include their motorized sports. Some of their resorts, you can water ski, you can wakeboard, you can go out on a catamaran. So there's a little bit more included in that. So if you're somebody who's really likes that kind of thing, sometimes that value where that's included and you're not paying extra for it ends up being a better value for you.
That's what I was going to say. They spend a little bit more, but they get more. So.
Right. Yeah. And then European plan is where you're going to go and you're going to pay for your resort, and then any food or beverage or activities you're going to pay separate. The Virgin Islands, there's not a lot of all-inclusives. I have a lot of people that will call wanting the Virgin Islands.
Yeah, the U.S. Virgin Islands that don't require a passport. Is that correct?
Right. And then they want all-inclusive, and there's not a lot of good options for that there. There are a few that maybe offer breakfast, or they maybe give them a voucher for like 1 or 2 dinners, depending on how many nights they're staying. But most of those resorts are going to be European plan because it's such a safe destination and such a destination that you want to get out and explore. They want to encourage people to get off the resort and go see the rest of the island and support the rest of the island. So that's kind of the reason behind that.
How do couples make their honeymoon unique to them?
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways, and I typically will reach out to the grooms usually 2 to 3 months prior to the honeymoon if they haven't requested anything, and make suggestions on things they can do to just make their trip a little bit more unique. So private candlelight dinner on the beach, a couples massage. Most of the, especially all-inclusive resorts, have fabulous spas that are there on site. So, throwing in a couples massage or a candlelight dinner on the beach. If they're an active outdoorsy couple, suggesting some excursions that are in the area that are maybe local to that destination. If they're traveling to Mexico, a lot of times I recommend going and visiting 1 or 2 of the cenotes that are there, because they're just amazing and something really unique to that destination. If they're in Jamaica, I will suggest, if they're near Ocho Rios, doing Dunn's River Falls, which is a waterfall that you can actually climb up in. They'll take your picture when you get up in the waterfall. Or if they're near Negril, I'll suggest maybe a day trip or an evening trip to Rick's Cafe, which is a bar that is set on a cliff where you can watch the sunset. It's beautiful there. And they actually have places where you can dive off the cliff if you're brave enough, and different levels and heights of that. And then they have professional divers that will dive off the really high cliffs.
So fun.
You can watch, and just a lot of, good Jamaican food and entertainment and music. So just depending on their destination, but there's so many ways you can make it unique. If you're an animal lover and you want to swim with dolphins or experience something like that, most of the Caribbean destinations have places where they can do that. Or if they want to zip line or rent an ATV for the day.
You mentioned reaching out to the groom or the bride, and I guess maybe as sort of a surprise to the one or the other, they can plan little things like that and kind of say, wow, look what I planned for you for the day. How cool.
Right. And another thing to really make it special, and especially if this is the first time they've traveled out of the country, most destinations have either arrival services where they're expedited through customs, which makes it really nice if you have a young honeymoon couple that's never traveled outside of the country. Specifically in Montego Bay, they have Club Mobe, which is an arrival and departure lounge. So the minute they get off the plane, there is somebody standing there with a sign with their last name that will expedite them through customs, take them to an air-conditioned lounge that has drinks and food where they'll sit while they wait for their transfer. And then upon the return, again, they'll be expedited into their check-in process, and again, be able to wait in that comfortable lounge for their flight rather than having to stand in those lines with everyone else.
I'm going to go backwards just a little bit. You and I kind of mentioned passports. So I know most places out of the United States are going to require passports. I know the U.S. Virgin Islands does not. Are there any other places that don't require you to have a passport?
No, other than the U.S. Virgin Islands. That's pretty much where your only destination you're going to go. And the other thing about passports is your passports have to have at least 6 months validity at the time of travel. So if you're traveling in June and your passport expires in July, you need to renew it. And those passport processing,
just in case you just want to be prepared.
Correct.
Okay. I got it. Travel protection, highly recommended.
Absolutely. I mean,
I would think.
I travel a lot, and I have a yearly plan that covers myself and my family. I won't travel without it. I just feel like that investment, and not necessarily, a lot of people say, oh, well, we're going to go no matter what. If I break my leg, we're still going to go. You say that, but
hopefully not. Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Might change your mind.
Right. You may change your mind, or, other things can come up, other unfortunate situations, or it can be something during travel. Your bags get lost and you get to your destination and don't have any of your clothes and have to rebuy all of your clothes. That's a big investment, especially when you're buying clothes in a Caribbean destination at a resort. You're going to be spending, more money than you would if you went to your local, Target to buy clothes.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
And it would cover you for that as well.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, the other tip, speaking of packing really quick, that I always recommend for couples is if you're taking 2 checked bags, pack half and half. So pack half of your clothes in one suitcase, half of your clothes in the other. If a suitcase gets lost, you at least have half your clothes.
You both have clothes at least.
Correct. Yes. And I always pack my swimsuit and a change of clothes in my carry-on in what I have. So if I get to and I don't have them, at least I have my suit to go to the pool and a dress to wear to dinner.
And any medications I would suggest putting in your carry-on as well. So you don't have to worry about that kind of thing. Anything that you have to have.
Correct.
What is the most common misconception about honeymoons?
Yeah. And we touched on this earlier. So I think the very most common misconception is that you have to travel right after your wedding. My husband and I personally, we got married in September and we traveled in December. So, thinking that you have to leave right after your wedding is probably the number one misconception, because you don't. You can wait, get settled, and then go on your honeymoon when you feel like you're settled and relaxed. And again, depending on your destination, it may not be in season during that time, or if you're getting married in September and you don't want that risk of a hurricane interrupting your honeymoon plans, wait and travel in December or January, or a time where it's a little bit less. Some people too, like if you're getting married in April or May, that's peak spring break season. And some people don't want that kind of an atmosphere on their honeymoon.
It might be a little too crowded elsewhere.
Right. So. If they're not staying in a people-only property and they don't, want to be bombarded with a bunch of kids.
Well, you have given us a wonderful list of things to think about. That's for sure. I mean, I'm not even going on a honeymoon, but the next time I travel and I go out of the country, I think I'll just call you rather than just go through all the Expedia and things that we talked about. I mean, you're just the expert. You have a host of information for us. So I really appreciate you being here.
Yes.
And I think you've been awesome just to let people know what's out there and what's available and how to do it and when to do it and all that kind of good things. So at the end of our podcast, I just want to keep you for just 1 second. And I think I had mentioned this to you earlier. We have had people write in with their wedding dilemma questions. So I'm going to read the question to you and see if you have any ideas. It has nothing to do with travel.
All right.
So here we go. So I had a writer email me, and this is, before I say that, I do want to tell everybody, this is basically just mine and Jen's opinion. We're not professional counselors. We don't know the ins and outs of the whole story, but we're going to do our best just to kind of give you our opinion. So the dilemma question today is from Angie, and Angie lives in downtown Charleston, and she writes, my fiance is from a very strict religious background. His family has requested that we not have alcohol at the wedding reception. After much discussion, my fiance and I have discussed it and are sort of okay with that. However, now my future in-laws are asking that we not have the garter toss, or we don't have our bridesmaids wear any dresses that could be revealing in any way. There have been a few other requests that I won't get into, but I'm starting to feel like this is their wedding, not ours. My fiance and I are both Christians and we respect the faith, but how do we make this wedding our wedding and not theirs? I want to start out on the right foot in this family. They're great people. and some of these questions that I get are like, wow, okay, they're difficult. I can see why they're writing in because it's really kind of a hard question to answer. So
it is.
I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think I would sit down with them and, explain to them, like, listen, we really want to respect your wishes because, we want you to enjoy yourselves at our wedding.
Right.
What are, if you were to pick the things that mean the most to you for us to do, what would those top 2 be? You've given us a lot of requests, no garter toss, the bridesmaids' dresses, no alcohol. If you were to pick your top thing that would appease you in this situation, what would that be? And if it's the alcohol, say, okay, well, we've agreed, that's not as important to us, and we're happy to do that for you. However, maybe we've already picked our bridesmaids' dresses, and
okay.
I
love it.
I feel like that's a very specific thing too, because to some, what's revealing may to others not be. But just allow them to kind of voice what's the most important to them, and
boundaries.
Right. And letting them know too, this is we want it to feel like our wedding. We, maybe explaining your side of it to them as well together. Saying
in the whole marriage process, I think, with in-laws, it's going to be all about boundaries anyway. May as well get started with this particular subject, and say, and you're right. I love that you were like, okay, we were going to do, 2 things that you guys really don't want us to have, because we do respect you and we want to make sure that, things start off on the right foot. Right. But yeah, I love that idea. Just kind of saying, but the rest of it is our wedding. Please allow us to be, ourselves, but be tasteful as well. So anyway, thank you. That was awesome. I loved it. I can't really add anything to that. So thank you again for joining us today. If you guys have any questions about honeymoons, obviously Jen at our Sweet Tea Life Travel is the place to go. I think her info is going to be up on the screen. So contact her. And thanks for being with us, Jen.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
All right. And until the next time, we are planning your dream wedding, just one episode at a time. So come on back next week, and we hope to see you then. Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching and listening to the Charleston Wedding Podcast. Be sure to click that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of the Charleston Wedding Podcast.